If you just picked yourself up a Nikon Z6 III and you need to set it up for wildlife photography, well, this is a video for you. So let's talk about it. This video is going to walk you through how I set up my Z6 III for wildlife photography. It's going to mirror my Z9 and Z8s, so when I go between the cameras, I don't have to think of anything. All the buttons will be in the same place. They'll act exactly the same. Now, a couple things you got to know about how I have stuff set up and the way I like to set it up. Firstly, set this in manual mode, because if you don't have it in manual, then the menus won't make sense sometimes. Second thing is, when I have focus, I want two things in my focus. So I like to keep it very, very simple. I want two things. One is I want to subject detect throughout the frame. It's going to grab the eye or the body of the animal. That's the subject detect. Second one is I want a single point focus that I direct where I want the focus to go to. So I can hit a tree, I can hit a rock, I can hit the bird, moose, whatever. I'm going to direct that focus to get to a certain point. And we'll talk about why when we get closer to the end of the stills, when we get into that focus back and forth, how I use the buttons. Then we'll get into the video after that. So let's start with this, setting this up for stills first. So again, go up here to your dial, up top left, push the button in, navigate over to manual. It's the first thing you got to do. Next thing is, let's turn the camera on. All right, let's go to the menu now and go all the way up here to the photo shooting menu. First thing we're going to go to is primary slot selection. We're fine there. Secondary slot function. Here's where we want to go to this. We want to do overflow, at least the way I have mine set up. The reason is if you go to a backup method, it's going to write to both cards at the same time. And you don't want that because it'll be as slow as your slowest card. So you have an SD card in here and not just a type B. It's going to go as slow as the SD card. So basically you only get a few shots where you hit the buffer. I mainly just run one type B, and here's the way I run it. So anyway, overflow is where I set mine. Image area, default is FX at full frame. Image quality. So this is when we go up here to raw. So go to raw, and then we're going to go down to raw recording. We want lossless compression. I want the biggest file size, the most information I want. So I want it raw and I want it lossless. Those are the things I want. In here, if you wanted to go into image quality, you wanted to shoot JPEG, you can there, but that's not how I set mine up. So I'm going to walk you how I set mine up. So it's going to be raw and lossless. All right, white balance. Let's click to the right on the D-pad, click to the right one more. And I put mine on auto to keep warm lighting colors. What I like here to last is I like a little more warmth in whatever tone that it's there on the white balance. You can leave it on default, but I tend to keep mine on the warm colors, so I like that a little bit more. So let's hit OK. Picture control does not matter because it's JPEG. So metering mode doesn't matter. If you're shooting manual, you're controlling the metering. If you're shooting any type of auto mode, so let's say you're doing manual with auto ISO, then you would change your metering mode. But since I control all three factors of the exposure triangle, I'm the metering, so we don't have to worry about metering. So release mode, go in here, let's go down to continuous H+, continuous high extended. Focus mode, we're going to change this one to AFC. Now, so it'll keep focusing. Area AF mode. I'm going to change this one. We're going to go down to Auto Area AF. Now, after testing, we may change that later. We may have to go like we did with the Z9 before we had the 4.0 firmware. We may have to go to a larger box. But right now, we're going to do Auto Area AF. So now we're going to AFMF, subject detection options. Go to the right. We're going down to animal. Click that. We are good. All right, so that is it for the stills menu. So now let's go down to the custom settings area, custom settings menu. So we're going to focus first. So A1 by default is on release. That's where we want it. We're good there. Custom controls, shooting, we're going to F2. So in here, we're going to change FN1, first one's the list, we're going to change this to our single point. So we're going to scroll down till we find AF area mode plus AF on. This is going to be the front button, FN1, that's going to be my single point, remember? So we're going to single point and we're going to have subject detect. So let's push this one to the right, and it's going to be the very first one on here, single point AF. Click the center button. It is selected. Now we're going to come down here to the scroll wheel up top. And we're going to change this one to exposure setting. We're going to come all the way over here to manual AV-TV. And I'm going to push it the other way where I want the front one to be TV and the back one. So what we're doing here is we're setting this back dial here and the front dial in the front, these two. So we're going to have TV on the front, which is your shutter. AV back here is your aperture in the back. That's where I want to set it. So hit OK there. OK, video, same thing. We're going to go down here to G2, custom controls. All right, we're going to come down here to the shutter release button under the G2 controls, custom controls. Hit that. We're going to click record video. So what that's going to do is when I'm in video, if I hit the shutter, I'm also going to record just like hitting the little red button up top. Either one of them is going to start the recording of video. And we're going to come down here to the dials again. We're going to make sure we set this. Again, exposure settings, go over to manual, click it again to TV AV. You want shutter in the front, aperture in the back. Hit OK. So that's the G2 settings. So that's all we're going to set there. So let's back out of this. Now we're going to the wrench icon here. So this is where you set your time zone, which I don't have set when you first get the camera. You got to set that. So time zone and date. Let's go to time zone. I got to find Alaska for me, so take me a minute. Nope, there's Alaska. Good, okay. Date and time. All right, date time format. Here, that's fine. Daylight savings time, turn that on because we have it still here in Alaska. All right. All right, so one last thing to set for stills, one of the most important things, so we don't want to forget it. Go down to the pencil icon, go down to D for shooting display, scroll down to get down to D6 shutter type. So we're going to hit here, going to go to the right, we're going down to electronic shutter. That's what I shoot, and that way I'll be in 20 frames a second. If you do need, to some reason, go into the other ones, you can. First curtain or mechanical, but I shoot electronic full 20 because this sensor speed, readout speed, extremely fast, no rolling shutter. So electronic shutter. So there we go. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and change my camera sound real fast because these are different. The camera sound A, I think it's kind of like what C is or B is on the Z. This is the one I like the best. That one there. So now I'm going to change my volume and move this back down to 2. There we go. So I can barely hear it. So that's it. All right. So now we're going to go set up the video, how I'm going to set the video up, how I'm going to run it for this camera. So go to the video icon here. And we're going down to destinations, find, going to video, file, type. We're going to H.265 10-bit. The reason I say that is I can't run the in-RAWs because I use Final Cut Pro. If you run DaVinci, I would run in-RAW here, and I don't run ProRes RAW because they're really big files. I go to H.265 10-bit. Go to that. We're good there. So now to go to frame rate, size, I'm going to go here. We're going up to, now I could set this to 4K, 120 frames a second, but I'm going to run this at the 240 option here. So it's going to be 1080p at 240 frames a second. Yes, I'm going to have less resolution. on this than 4K 120. But I want to really play with that 240 frames a second, and then later I'll probably change it back to 120. So you can change wherever you want, but for me, I'm going to do 1080p, 240 frames a second. I want to really slow it down. Now we're going down to AF area mode. Hit that to the right. We're going down to auto area AF again. Hit that. We're going down to AF MF subject detection options next. Go to the right. Go to the right one more, subject detection. We're going to animal again. And there we're good. And that's it. Camera's set up, good to go. So now if I go into video, I can go here and I can just hit that shutter button up top. Now I'm recording. And it's auto recording. Hit the shutter button again, I'm out of it. So that's all I do for video. Kick it over to the little dial in the back, kick it over to video, hit the shutter button, record, get done, hit it again to stop. It's that simple. And then I'm recording 1080p, 240 frames a second. Oh, there is one more setting in here. Let's find it real quick. I want to make sure we don't release the shutter without having a memory card inside the camera. All right, what we're going to do is go down to the wrench icon. This is where we can set it where we don't want the shutter released unless I have a SD card in here. The reason I want to make sure I have a card in the card door is there's been times where I'll get out of the truck, I'll start messing things, and then I'll maybe hit the shutter and I'll realize I don't have an SD card, so it won't let you release it, so now you know you got to go back. So if you don't pay attention and you're just running that and you don't have a card in here, you'll never know. So go to the wrench icon, go down to slot empty release lock, where it says OK. Go to the right, go up one, lock, released lock. So if you look at the little question mark up top, you click that, it tells you choose whether the shutter can be released when there's no memory card is inserted in the camera. Release lock, the shutter cannot be released if no memory card is inserted. So that's what we want, released lock. Again, that way if you get out there and you start shooting, it'll say you don't have a memory card, but if you don't set that, you're out there shooting and you don't have a memory card, you just wasted everything you just took a picture of. So now let's talk about how to use this in the field. So the front button up here in the front, the FN1 we programmed, that is our single point. So we find something we want to see, single point, we are focused. Good, so let's focus closer to us to get rid of that. Now the AF on, don't have anything here to focus on, maybe I can focus on myself here. Hit the AF on button, and it will grab focus on whatever subject's supposed to grab on. I don't have an animal in here, so it's not going to hit it. But the AF on is going to be your subject detect to grab whatever. And then your single point is going to be wherever you got your single point at. And your AF on is going to be your autofocus to find your subject within the frame. So how do we control our exposure? Very simply. So the front dial up here is our shutter. So what we do is we roll that around. If you look at the bottom left, it's got our shutter speed changing. Our dial in the back up here, that is going to be our aperture. So if you see where your aperture, your f-stop, there goes the f-stop changing. Very simple. Now for ISO, very simple. You hit the ISO button up here up top, and then you use the dial here in the back. And that's how you control your ISO. Hit the button, you see it changed yellow. Now you can change it. You can just roll it up to where you need to have your ISO. And there you go. Very simple. That's how we use it. Then we get that. Once we have that, then we can get our focus with our AF on. And now we're focused and we can shoot. So get it exposed for the monitor there. Let's single point that monitor. And there we go. Very, very simple. That's how I use this camera in the field. Single point to get to a spot, AF on to get the eye, control the ISO by pushing the button and then rolling around. I set my aperture, I set my shutter, and I leave it. All I work is my ISO mostly for most of the time. Because I pretty much got my shutter set for the subject I want, what I'm trying to set from shooting like mallards or something, so my duck. I'm going to put it to 1600 and 2000 and leave it. I'm going to set my aperture to wherever I need to set my aperture to for whatever I want. If I want to really shallow depth of field, I'm going to shoot an f4 lens, I'm going to have it at f4. If I want to get more of the duck, I probably have it at f8. and I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to touch it anymore. I'm going to leave those two alone. From there, I'm just going to work my ISO from whichever direction I'm facing. If I'm facing more to the sun, and bring my ISO down to get my exposure correctly, because you can see it through the monitor, which makes it really, really nice. And then from there, you can move towards the darker areas, then you can increase your ISO. And one thing you got to learn, the trick is to work the single point and the AF on your subject detect back and forth all the time. There's times when you get low, it won't find the animal, or you're in a tree, it's busy. You need to learn how to use a single point to jump to a spot closer to the animal, and then hit the subject detect to grab the animal. And that's how I use this camera, and that's how I had it set up. So there we go. This camera is set up and ready to go to the field and ready to be used. So I hope this was useful. If you have any questions about it, please let me know, and we'll answer those for you. But that's how I have my camera set up, my Z9s, my Z8, and now the R6 Mark III. After a month or two of using this, we'll do an updated guide to say any lessons learned that we found that was different for this camera we needed to do versus the Z9, Z8, how I use those. But that's how it's set up. So until we meet again, you guys get outside and go run that shutter.